Today we find ourselves on the banks of the Damariscotta River here in a really historic place that dates back way before the Europeans arrived on this continent. And we're looking at the ancient shell middens of the native populations that were living here.
So we're standing here. There's probably 5 meters or so of oyster shells behind me in this bank, and on top of them are now trees. So the question is, how did this get here, and who are these people who made this? Today we know the Wabanaki people live all throughout this area still, and Wabanaki is a term that means the people of the dawn or people of the dawn land. And because we're on the east coast of the United States, what is now the United States, that makes sense. But these folks have been here for since the last ice age. The ancestors of today's Wabanaki people have lived here for thousands and thousands of years. They were able to make use of some of these oysters, of course, starting at about 2,200 years ago, up until about 1,000 years ago. Folks were coming here specifically early in the spring and staying throughout the early part of the summer, often, as is shown by archaeological evidence, and then moving on to other food sources. This is a transition zone between the boreal forests in northern Maine and the hardwood forests in southern Maine, and so it offers a great diversity of plant and animal life that people could make use of. We really only see in this particular upper part of the estuary the oysters, but in the lower part of the estuary we see soft-shell clams. And so the clams are the predominant animal found in Middens, not only in the estuary here in the lower part of the estuary, but also in the adjacent estuaries as well, as predominantly clams.
So 1,200 years goes by, and all of a sudden everything stops, and this is way before European settlement and encroachment.
Right.
What happened?
So we really don't know entirely, but there's been some scientific research that's gone on. The scientist whose paper I read was Sanger, and what he postulates is that with even further increase in salinity and in water levels over the next 1,000 years or so, there was a change in the predators, and specifically the oyster drill may have decimated the population here. So we had people coming here for 1,000 years, 1,200 years, eating oysters. This was an important part of their livelihood, and then you couple on top of that some predation that was certainly on the increase at that time, apparently. And so oyster drills are a small carnivorous animal that can certainly do in a population, or at least have a huge impact on it. When
the colonists came, the Europeans came, these oysters were rare or maybe even extinct from this estuary. Is that right? Exactly right.
Yeah. So if there were any left at that time, they were quickly entirely decimated at that point, because these hills were denuded of all vegetation, erosion, and runoff. Also sawmills on our streams, huge shipyards, burning wood for bricks, a huge influx of sediment, and no real understanding at the time of what the impact would be. Any remaining oysters and many other things were quickly smothered. Great Salt Bay, they say, has 3 feet or more of sediment that came in during, the mid to late 1800s, essentially. The sister midden to this one, which is called Whaleback, which is across the river, they built a factory there, and they were taking out literally tons of the material, that the shells, and they were using it for chicken feed and roads and fertilizer and mining it. I mean, if you had come down the river here, 1,000 years ago, you would have seen a huge white hill, and then another huge white hill. And imagine going back and forth on this waterway in a canoe.
Real landmark.
It would have been an absolute landmark, and that's been postulated by Dr. Alice Kelly as important part of traveling on the river, and perhaps a way of meeting other people and getting together. And so it's a very interesting concept, and there's lots to learn, I think, in that regard.
Tell us a little bit about aquaculture on the Damariscotta River these days.
Well, it's certainly a booming business now. It took a long time to really pull off, I would say, and a lot of investment by the farmers in terms of understanding water quality and understanding the husbandry parts of it. There's a potential for disease issues, just like there are with any other farming. Biosecurity continues to be an issue. You don't want to move oysters from one place to the next.
Yeah.
So just like the oysters that were here 1,000 years ago, there's a lot. There's predators. There's disease, and now it is a booming business, and certainly the oysters are well known. It's a very relatively clean river, and they're known worldwide. I have a friend who went to Dublin, Ireland not that long ago and saw a big sign that said Damariscotta River Estuary Oysters or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So
and this river supports about half the state's oyster production.
It does,
isn't that
which
right?
is enormous.
So,
Yeah.
So it's really had a renaissance of sorts.
Absolutely.